What is the quality of the day? What's the quality of your time you're spending right now? I think the system, such as it is right now, discourages that conversation, discourages that question. Thinking about what does it really feel like to sit in the chair today making this record? The last song I mastered before I left, what did it feel like to be in that room? What could I have been doing other than that? Why was I mastering that song? What was I trying to achieve? What baggage was I bringing? What value was I bringing? Could someone else have done it, and would it have been just as good? All of those questions, I think they're worth asking.
What are you reading there, John?
Don't ask. I don't understand it just yet.
What is that? A book of poetry?
Book of poetry that Rory gifted.
Remember the poem I read a few weeks ago, the Portable Paradise?
The grandmother and the
yeah. So it's I found that on a website. It's sort of along with a whole bunch of other selected poetry. So I went and bought the book that it came from, and because John liked the poem, I bought him one too. And I don't know if there's anything else any good in it. I haven't read anything else that I like yet. But it might be. Have we got you, Michael?
Yep.
Michael is on the road, on the road
what
driving.
What freeway are you on right now, Michael?
We are on I-76, everyone.
Never even heard of it.
In Illinois?
I'm actually about to cross the state line from Ohio to Pennsylvania, I guess.
You know,
I know that one. I've been on that one. I know.
You know, he's somewhere weird because he said I before the number.
Yeah.
He didn't call it the.
Yeah.
He's not on the 75.
Interstate 76?
Yeah. That's how we roll.
This is going to be the first time I go through a toll while on air. This is broadcast history right now.
I think if the listeners only knew the toll that
toll
this
booth?
takes on us,
What kind of toll are they
bring
exacting?
this thing to air every week.
I'm going through an
the
emotional
sacrifice.
toll right now.
The heavy thinking, the
an
furrowed
emotional
brow.
toll. That's really
Exacting a toll.
While you're doing that, Michael,
I went through an emotional toll last week in the studio.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. Are we
I
going
want to hear
there?
about this.
Are we what?
Are we going there?
I mean, to a degree, why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not what I would have thought it would have been.
Mm-hmm.
Like the writing sessions, with great writers, great artists, big artists, great producers, great studio. Everything's like poised.
Great
to be,
tracking engineer.
Yeah. Everyone in the room is at a high level, and you're like, can you just loop that guitar? Just like, can we play it better first before I cut up a loop? We record it better. Like, can you? It's not. That's not why I'm here. You know what I mean? It just was a lot of the.
You want to double back for a second and give people who maybe didn't hear
New
the
listeners
previous,
and remind people.
So you're a mixer. You're a full-time mixer and have been for quite a long time. And over the course of the last few months, you made a decision to do something, and that's kind of the context for this last week.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, I forget about that. The listenership. I guess we went through this a couple months ago. I just thought it would be interesting to, after mixing hundreds, over a couple of thousand records since going full time in the mix zone, it would be nice to go shape records from the impetus. And it just wasn't that. It's like the record changes, the key changes, the chords change, so many things change. And it's a lot of really fast changes where the capture of the thing almost doesn't matter, right? Like let me get a quick DI guitar, and the tone not so good. Like, that's not going to make or break the record. So why does the engineer have to make or break the record in that position, right? Yeah. So the way I was thinking about it, and my friend, one of my best friends who I'm doing this with, we were very much on the same page and had our debrief Monday morning after the emotionally tolling week, which is I'll get back to why that is the case. It was like, that's not the best use of your time. like this, coming up with songs and in the room and changing ideas. Maybe the performance wasn't great by the artist, that you maybe hoped for something better. And you having to time align the vocal, like, anybody can do that. Anybody. That's not why I was there. Getting drum sounds and then using a bass drum. It's not why I'm there. If we're going to actually record drums to a record, like the artist brought up a great drummer that she's like, oh, this would be so great for this record. Get Thomas Pridgen on the record. I was like, oh, I love Thomas Pridgen. Like, would love to record Thomas Pridgen, get him in the room and we'll do that later after the record. Do the thing. So, we, Homie and I discussed that after the fact. Like, that's probably what we would do if the records got chosen. And then where we ended up is, hey, when I'm making records, I'm going to bring you in to be the engineer on the records at some place, whether it's the beginning or pre-mix, like after a day, like sort through some stuff, go through gain structure, mute a bunch of shit. Like, there's more to be done with my specialty than what I spent the week exhausting myself doing, right? So woke up at 7, espresso, meditate, no exercise, right to mixing. Mixed 2 songs from 7:30 to 12:30 every day. Showed up to East West Studios from 1 p.m. to midnight every day.
Oy.
And again, no exercise. Like, stomach was off, everything was off, sleep cycle. It's like, what's the price you're paying to live that lifestyle is the question that I'm coming back to, because I actually think that people are great at it, and I think I'd be good at it in my 20s. I'm just that's not where I'm at. That's not where I've the path that I've been going on. So it has to really be worth that price in order for me to want to go back into the studio and do that. It has to be really worth that cost. Not price necessarily. It's a cost. And I didn't feel good. I still don't feel. I'm still feeling the
the aftermath, the after effects.
The after effects, for sure. I don't recover anymore like I did in my 20s. I'm not even that old. I'm 35 years old, as a lot of us know. I don't feel old, but it definitely feels like it's taking a good amount of time to get back from that. And
that's a lot of time to be on, man.
That's on.
16 hours a day.
And more than half of it is on for something that you don't know is going to get used. And you have to have that in your personality or in your desire, in your level of ambition, to be okay with that, to be okay with speculation. And I wasn't the entire time I did it before I went full-time mixing. I was always anxious about it, always insecure about it. So that didn't change.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like that Lego-style songwriting production thing is not what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like...
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
It's like, if people do that and they come up with a great song and then make a plan to record it, that's where John Castelli steps in to help shape that plan and create an atmosphere where that song can come to life.
Yeah. And it brings me to a thought where I riffed on it for a while on Live with Matt Rad this week, was the idea of the comfort zone. There's this like negative connotation, negative connotation around the comfort zone of you always got to be out of your comfort zone. That's how you move forward. That's how you push things forward. And I'm like, well, isn't our thing at this table to kind of try to challenge the status quo here? Like, what are the positives of the comfort zone? Well, the positives of the comfort zone is I was able to mix 2 songs for my clients a day before going into the studio because I'm comfortable in my space. Yeah. I'm comfortable in my techniques, in my tool set, my skill set. I'm comfortable in a lot of things.
The 80-20 rule comes in.
Yeah.
It's like comfortable in the zone doing core business 80% of the time, and 20% is set to challenge and change and upgrade. And yeah,
I really like that. I've never really 80-20 the comfort zone. I never thought of the comfort zone any other way except for you're supposed to be out of it.
Well, sometimes,
but yes, sometimes, but supposed to does not, doesn't presume sometimes, right?
This dovetails wonderfully with the thing that's been on my mind a lot this week. Are you still there, Michael?
Yep.
Great. Because this pertains to you. But so that J. Cole video that you sent that came out before the record was like a short, how would you describe it? Like a short film, kind of
a hype trailer,
yeah,
short film, documentary.
Your 10 minutes set up for the record that's coming and the story of sort of this past minute. And I think you were very inspired by it, Michael. You felt it was kind of, it got you psyched for the record, which is part of what it was designed to do, of course. But also the story of it, the whole thing excited you.
Yeah, specifically the fact that, he acknowledged his position of being a successful hip hop artist. He wasn't like, I felt like he was being humble about it, but also like he knows where he is in his career. And he also knows that most artists at that level don't need to, including himself, don't need to put out another record. And he was kind of trying to understand, in a way, where did I lose it? Lose that energy. And am I going to put something out that doesn't have that? And really trying to reconnect with what excited him about music. I thought that was really inspiring. Just like acknowledging your position and then trying to connect back, or trying to connect to, I don't know if his method was the right method in terms of just going back to where he used to be inspired, but like he was still attempting to reignite a fire that he acknowledged he had and acknowledged he lost along the way. And I thought that was really inspiring.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Still torn on the record, honestly. I don't think it was his best work. There's like a few good tracks, but that video is really inspiring to me.
Yeah, yeah. I'll come back to the record in a minute, but
I'll go there with you.
But I had an interesting listening experience with that record yesterday. But I watched the video, and I think my response on the group thread was interesting, and I found it kind of it sort of annoyed me, and I couldn't figure out why. And then around the same time, I listened to the Knowledge Project. Sorry, it sounds like I'm shitting on two things that you both liked now. The knowledge, because that is actually what I'm doing, but I'm not shitting on it for its own purpose. The Knowledge Project.
We're on episode like 40 or something. I'm pretty sure I'm used to this shit already. Let's go.
Yeah. The one that you liked on the Knowledge Project, you and Michael, you and John with
Jim Collins.
And I listened to it and kind of hated it, and then was like, fuck it, I'm going to listen to it all again and like pay even more attention.
You still hated it?
And I didn't, I like, some of the stuff stuck with me, but I was trying to figure out why is it annoying me so much? And it was sort of bound to the same thing. And it is, I think, the sort of increasing absurdity, I think, of this American mythology around work and grind and this sort of heroism of suffering for work.
Exactly.
And did I send you guys that I sent it to someone today? Maybe I didn't put it on one of our group threads, but I sent it to Sydney, my wife, last week, and it was just something that I came across on Reddit or something, or on Instagram, and it was like someone's tweet. And it was, European out of offices. Hi, I'm away camping for the summer. Email again in September. American out of offices. I have left the office for 2 hours to undergo a kidney surgery, but you can reach me on my cell anytime. And
oh my God.
Real.
And if you come from Europe, that kind of rings truer than you might imagine.
Yeah.
And so
it rings very true. I didn't come from Europe.
So why? And then I'll sort of round out my point. But then during the week, I was sort of thinking a lot about what the market does when you're subject to the market. The market is all about driving out inefficiency. It's all about increasing value for the shareholders. It's all about just driving price down and productivity up. That's it. That's all it's designed to do. And of course, a huge benefit is that we get things. We get iPhones and we get roads and we get food that we can afford, and bananas for 50 cents or whatever, but thinking a lot about that and thinking about our role as engineers who are paid for either by labels who have an oversupply of engineers, or artists who are broke, or as you just described, don't really need or care for engineering all that much. So sort of a thankless space to be in. And you're kind of often on an hourly rate or a per track rate or whatever. And it's just this sort of depressing spiral where more and more people come into the market and drive price down, and we're losing touch with what it means to inspire a performance and capture it. The Lego style thing that Spider just said, And
the grind can't get any grindier.
Yeah. So
I mean, there aren't more hours in the day that people can stay awake, and you know what I mean? It's a limited resource.
I feel like we're on the cusp of something. And of course, I've admitted more than once that I'm on a major biology kick since that Tim Ferriss thing, and I've been reading just a bunch of his essays and tweets and reading people that he's linking to and whatever. But there's definitely change afoot in everything in terms of, and it feels like, I think what I figured out annoyed me so much about that Jim Collins interview. It's like I was listening to an interview recently with Warren Buffett and his co-investor, and it's just like these guys who won at this game, this long arc of post-war growth, lecturing people on how to win at a game that is literally disappearing, falling through people's fingers like sand. Yeah. And they're like, well, if you just did this and that, you would succeed. And it's like, nah, bro, that's what worked for you in that time. That's backward looking. And at the David White image of standing on the back of the boat, looking at the wake of the boat instead of looking forward was very powerful to me. So all of those things have sort of been swirling around my mind and overlaid with our conversation last week, Spider, about kind of this moment of trying to help people, and we sort of alternate between like the work, the real work of trying to move people through difficult puzzles with small budgets, and the gratifying feeling when you get emails and messages like the ones we got this week, where people are really affected by the work that we do here at the table, the four of us, or in rooms, So it's a whole muddle of things that I'm feeling right now, but that this work, grind, hustle archetype, it's not holding water for me right now.
Yeah, I think I saw a post by Future the other day that was like, I haven't not been in the studio for however many years, 10 years, never missed a single day. I was like, a decade every single day?
Yeah, that would be so tight though if you didn't.
It's like, is that real?
I know a guy who was in the studio for 7 years straight, never missed a day. Verifiable, worked with heavy people, but it's like that's not
concerning.
But that's something you don't.
But
boast about.
Navy SEALs only do 2 tours, right? Like you can't just go that hard. You're not going to be at your best for 7 years, for a decade every time. Granted, it's like what we talk about whale watching. I mean, if you're in the studio and you're waiting to catch the vibe and you're there's a higher probability you'll catch the vibe if you're there for 10 years.
How long until you're rapping about the sofa in the studio? Like, what is that?
Okay, hold on. Maybe he goes out somewhere and then comes back.
Yeah.
I'm sure he
What's
goes
the radius? You got a jet? Like, can you get out to lunch somewhere?
Yeah.
Like,
so I wrote this.
I like.
You go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah.
Please.
So on this thing, I wrote this while all these thoughts were swirling around my head. I haven't read it again or edited it, so it's not good. But I said, if work is self-discovery, then immersing yourself in it has a long-term benefit, a stone upon which to sharpen yourself. If work is a means to an end, then why capitulate to the grind? What is the mythical prize at the end? The lottery mindset? Everyone else does it. It's competitive. What does winning really look like?
Yeah, but who knows the answer to that? 1, but 2. We find it hard to even see our future selves, right? Like I chose to watch after, I think it was like after the whole week, I was so exhausted. I had an hour on the couch and I watched the Explained on Money that Netflix put out.
Oh yeah. Any good?
It actually really is good because it just dumbs down a lot of things that biology talks about and kind of the higher level like Lex Friedman podcast and the things that we all listen to. It's very, very distilled versions of that. But one of the things that I thought was the most interesting was the fact that until we had that Face app thing that came out, which I thank God have never participated in, where you can see yourself at 70, that was the first time people in surveys decided that they thought they should, millennials specifically, thought they should save money. That there was no vision for their future self. They didn't know what they would look like. Yeah, it's like it's a very staggering statistic of the people that were like, I don't even know what I'm going to look like, feel like I'm not going to be in the future me. So why do I have to save money? And then when they saw a glimpse of what they might look like, the percentage skyrocketed and how many people started to save.
Crazy.
That's crazy. I mean, because of an application. Granted, we know the power of applications these days is.
It was powerful to see myself and see you guys, like seeing Dale and you and Rory, like
me looking like Doug Fern.
Yeah, the Doug app.
Yeah, the Doug app. But that
visceral.
I relate to that because I'm listening to you talk, and like, first of all, there's so many threads to pull on of what you've been mulling over for a week. But I don't know what winning looks like. I don't know what my future looks like. That's why last year was the first year I've saved any money. And I'm doing it almost because you're supposed to. Like I don't know where it's supposed to be invested other than Bitcoin, which this is not investment advice. Every caveat and I'm not giving anybody advice. But besides that, based on what you're saying, you listen to Warren Buffett talk, it's like, well, that game worked. It's not working anymore. Talked to my mother today on the phone, and she finally put her letter of retirement in for a job she's been at for 40 plus years, and she has a pension.
Yeah.
This woman has a pension. None of us have pensions. None of us listening to this podcast probably have pensions. And it's not even that much. She has to scrape by if she lives for another 35 years because she's 65. So if she gets to 100, she'll just be at a basic level of like, I don't have to stress, very barely. And she's still going to work part-time. It's like the pension, the 401ks, like these things, Social Security are falling out from underneath us, and we don't have any guarantees there. So why are we listening to Warren Buffett? It just doesn't make any sense to my brain to say, I want to do what that guy says I'm supposed to do. And not that we're going to only listen to Bology, but like that trajectory seems a little bit more realistic to someone in our position, in our lives, in our age group and status. I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. It's really hard to see it. And maybe it wasn't so hard to see it when you had a pension or you had a tenure when you still do have a tenure or some sort of teaching position that is hardwired in, and you kind of just know, well, this is how I'm going to live. And when I retire, I go to Florida or I go to the Amalfi Coast, and this is just what life will look like. And that's great to have that vision. But if we're so narrow focused on our creative work, which the relevance conversation comes up there too. Like, if you're in there for a decade, how do you remain relevant if you're not hearing what other people are doing? Are you always culturally relevant? Is that just, are you Drake? Like, how long does Drake's career really last? How long does his investment last from the career he already had for 5 years? Like this, you can't just be so blindfolded to everything but what's in the 4-wall studio. And like very much learned that this last week. Just I'd put more money on the fact that what we did won't generate money than it would. And if it did, that would be great. And it'd be surprising and wonderful. But I'd bet against it just on, not based on the quality of the material, based on the way that it happened. It just was I don't even know how to describe this. I don't want to like trash talk because it was actually a really great experience in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But there's just the enthusiasm, like the story that was there. Like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm going to stop there.
Michael,
I think it's hard to put into words.
There. It's hard to put to words. I don't understand the future. I never did. And I thought it was, sorry, one more last thing. I thought personally that there was no value in thinking about it because I was head down in work and this is all that mattered and the present moment is all that mattered. And then you have this like new age meditation lifestyle that tells you that the present is the only thing that matters. You're like, I like that for some bits. Emotionally, exactly.
That's
emotionally.
A different thing.
The ability to control emotions in the moment versus, I don't know, like I've survived 2 near-death car experiences. Like I might live long, and I never thought I would get past 30. So like here I am, 35. I'm thinking I might live.
Yeah. And you want to?
No, but I'm serious. This isn't a joke. Like I'm dead serious. I didn't think I would.
No, yeah.
And I was supposed to be paralyzed. I mean, I was paralyzed for almost 2 weeks. I couldn't feel my legs in the hospital the first time. Like that would have ruined everything. Like who knows my level of optimism if you have no legs. Yeah. Who knows? It's a challenge. It's a challenge. Who knows?
I want to hear from the person who, at least in the short term, has opted out from the hustle and the grind and the
but
and
I haven't.
the work. No, I'm talking to the guy on the phone.
Michael. I was like, you're looking at me. I'm like, I haven't yet. I'm still mixing 2 albums. Like,
no, of course, and me neither. I left the studio and I'm going back to the studio, so I'm not. We're in it. But Michael, given my reaction to the J. Cole thing and the fact that you're on the road and you have all this space and time and different experiences, even just the San Diego thing of being down there for a month and sort of on the water, just the contrast between downtown LA and being on the water for a month is pretty intense in terms of how it can rearrange your physiology, I think. So I'd love to hear what I'm forcibly bringing you in because we're fired up and you're not at the table. So I'm going to inject you.
I am sitting though. My ass does hurt. I'll tell you that. I've been sitting for hours at this point. Where am I at? Well, I mean, I kind of wanted to circle back to the critique of the show and kind of dive into that a little bit. The way when we were explaining it and kind of presenting these 2 new sources, I think your takeaway was strong. I think there is an underlying narrative that's kind of running in between phrases and in between ideas that speaks to this importance of work in terms of like work maybe only being the only function that any human being should perform. Like not breathing aside, like whatever, just work. And I think that is true, but there is something to be said about the other side of that, which is what is the benefit of work? And do those videos speak to that as well? Or does that content speak to that as well? I think like the benefit of work can be things like, which is what I took away from what J. Cole was saying of like this idea of challenging yourself. Now, if that gets to the opposite end of the spectrum and all you do is challenge yourself and you're just never satisfied, terrible. But there's also, and it's work to do that. It's also work to realize your position, realize what you've done, and say, how can I do something better or different or something I'm as excited about or more excited about, and put in work to achieve that. Hip hop's obviously a culture where work is like, at least lyrically, work is something that's sort of worshipped in that space. With Jim Collins, I mean, he's devoted his career to understanding work and like how things can perform better. And he's always trying to drive to the first principles of things so that it can transcend past sort of these currents of currency changing or value of certain companies or whatever. I want to look at the positive side of that because I think to critique anything, you have to look at both sides to really come away with a honest representation of the artifact, right? I just felt like we kind of went through that quick and transitioned into a few other things. So I wanted to bring it back there for a second, just to like explore that fully, just to give credit to what you were saying and credit to the piece that exists. Just because, I don't know, I think it's right. Ethically, I think it's right.
Yeah. No, I'm down with
the
that.
time and,
Yeah, I'm speaking of my experience of these things, not of the not of the things.
Exactly. But well, it's a critique of the thing and how you experienced it and what you took away, what you decoded from the thing. I'm wondering if you did explore the other side and this is where you netted out, like listen to the whole thing.
I think we've spent a lifetime exploring the other side.
I did because I that's why I went back and listened again, to the whole thing twice, because it sort of, the first time it annoyed me, the second time I got more from it. But I really was making an effort to sort of, it was kind of like, hey, 2 people at the table were as excited about this as I was about Balaji or as we were about David White or something like this. Was in the last couple of months, this was like, you guys were like, this thing fucking hit. So I was like, I need to know why. And, and I need to understand it because, again, in the spirit of clearly not having all the puzzle pieces because, I'm as of 7:00 on the 19th here of May, I'm still not a realized being. Still haven't quite got the retirement dialed in. So I'm open. And when two people of the four are like, this is good, then I'm gonna circle back around and try and figure it out, But so the critique is only, obviously the guy's super bright. The interview was really good. And the critique is only sort of how I intersected it with it at this moment. And I think we've all read a book or seen a show, and then years later come back to it and been like, man, I thought this was horseshit, or I just wasn't ready for it, or like the new you meets it. And
I haven't
sense.
listened to this one, but when there are some podcasts, lectures, videos that I vibe with. And one thing I notice and what goes through my head when I don't is like, this isn't the influence I'm looking for. It's not really, does it make me comfortable, uncomfortable? That's not the dimension by which I'm judging things. It's like, is this, I could look at anything right now. I could listen to anything ever recorded right now that I have access to, which is a lot, right? How am I going to spend this time? What is this an influence I want? And I think like it sort of goes to our hesitation around coming up with prescriptive advice on the spot. It's like, what you should do? Engineers work more. It's like, in some cases, maybe, but we live in a world of trade-offs, and that's always the thing that's missed when people make statements, because it's encoding a clear message in a video, or about work or hard work or some kind of ethic or morality or anything. It's like that message, it's hard to present something complex enough that takes into consideration the nature of the way things are, like the many trade-offs that are at play. It's like there are many ways to live, different ways of engaging with work that can produce good outcomes. There can be some people who have a sort of routine way of working, and their emphasis in their mind is elsewhere, with their family or what they're doing with their family properties, or, there's other ways of meeting needs and generating wealth. And, so you can't just say like, someone should work more or less or care more or less about it. It's like, well, what is the rest of the picture?
Yes.
What are the unique set of trade-offs in that human's life? It's complicated. So I don't know if that illuminates at all for listeners, like the sort of the thing that we're trying to understand. But
I think
that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. And
it's not really two sides. You see what I mean? It's a complex interaction of many dimensions of trade-offs.
And when I think about the world, when I think about the joke meme that I read earlier, the European who's on the 2-month camping trip, it's like, we need American innovation. We need that spirit. We need that it's that kind of spirit that got us vaccines for COVID and that got us planes in the air, and
individuals undertaking heavy efforts
and focused and driven with purpose. But I had a point about that I wrote, something else that I wrote, I can't find it. But it was just, if you're not discovering penicillin or building the rockets that's going to put the dude on the moon, you have to think about what it is you are doing. And if you're capturing a song, you have to think about the sort of totality of what that is. You more than your engineering rate of $300 a day or $400 a day or $600 a day, more than how many songs you recorded that week or how fast you mixed it or whatever. You have to think about the whole thing of like, we've all met people who had day jobs who quit them to go back in the studio. We talked to someone this week who had made a decision to trade off leave the music life for a businessy, corporate-y life, whatever you would call it. And I would say in broad terms, regretted the decision. And we explored maybe some of that terrain. For some people, it's very meaningful to be in the studio working with music, or to have this creative life. Other people are chasing a prize. They're chasing some sort of, again, in the spirit of the David White and Sam conversation, these sort of mirage-like things. Oh, when I get this, when I get to the first record with 1 million streams or 1 billion streams, or the Grammy, and it's, as you arrive at each one, it sort of becomes intangible and sort of disappears in front of you, and then you're chasing the next thing. And all the while wondering, what is the day-to-day experience? What is the quality of the day? What is the really the quality of the time you're spending right now? A lot of people, I think the system such as it is right now discourages that conversation, discourages that question. Thinking about, what does it really feel like to sit in the chair today making this record? The last song I mastered before I left, what did it feel like to be in that room? What could I have been doing other than that? Why was I mastering that song? What was I trying to achieve? What baggage was I bringing? What value was I bringing? Could someone else have done it, and would it have been just as good? All of those questions, I think they're worth asking. Not every day for every song.
That sounds pretty neurotic.
That's a long checklist.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes it's worth asking, because I think most people, back to my list of questions, like, is it competitive? Are you just doing it because everyone else is doing it?
Yes, that's exactly why everybody's doing it. In my opinion, that's what this week was about, and I wanted to reflect on it, because it's very easily easily understandable why people do it, right? There's a higher probability that I'll have more successful songs if I go into the studio every day with a new artist. There's just a higher probability that I will meet more people, that will connect me with more people, that will give me access to more people that also could make hit songs. It's just, I get why why people hustle. They're at parties and there's just more people around, right? And the less people around, the less of a chance you have to see the whale. Maybe not, right? So I just have this new sense of, call it confidence, that I have a very, just above flat upward trajectory in my career. So I'm going to wait for the hits to come, because I'm doing good work and it's being heard and people come. And I just got one the last 2 weeks. I have a top 10. Haven't had a top 10 since Talk, which was 2.5 years ago. And it feels good to have it. I wanted to celebrate it a little bit in my head. I wanted to mildly gloat about it, just to give myself this, this mirage of a validation. That I like the David White imagery there, because it definitely feels like that. On the day, I was like, this is sick. People are going to hire me because of it. This is great. I'll have another maybe a year or two of, oh, you did that song. Cool. Because that's what happened with Talk. And this is just the way the business rolls.
Sure.
And for the people that aren't there yet, the only way to get there is to have it happen. There's no magic way. You just work on a song that does well, and the dots are connected.
Yes.
The stars don't align. Sorry, everybody. And I want that again, and I want that feeling again, and it felt good. It feels good to admit that I think it's cool that I have it too. But that's gone. I'm already on to the next. Like I looked at the chart this morning, because they redid it. It's like it fell one place already. It's at number 9, not number 8. I'm like, it's out. It's done. Let's go. What's next? Like my thread was twisted like after a week. It's a week. I'm not even excited anymore. Like this is real life. And if people can feel excited about it for longer, that's great. But I'm just giving my version of that. And that makes me reflect on, okay, what did I bring to the table here? How many of those do I have to have? Like, for what reason? Is it a financial reason? Is it a personal? Is it a validation reason to know that people think I'm good at what I do? Like, let's sit there, like you're saying, Rory, and just not every day and every moment, but like pivotal moments like that, or milestone moments like that, when you're not Serban or Manny or Basker or Kanye or these the household longevity names and careers, it's got to, I don't know what it means to them. I'd love to find out, how, you have 150 plus number ones. What's 157? What does that actually mean? Are you stoked? Do you go drink a bottle of champagne for it? When does that level of celebration kind of subside? Did you ever celebrate it? These questions actually really want to be answered, because I'm struggling with it, because we don't really like to celebrate, but I like to celebrate sometimes. But the question is, why are we doing it? Is what Rory's bringing up. And I think I'm doing it to have those peak moments. I think I'm doing it to get a hit song. I've always wanted to. So I have to admit that out loud, that I'm in the game because I want to make hits, right? I also want to make really cool records that have no shot at hits because only 1 million people are going to hear them versus a couple of billion. Maybe even 10,000 people will hear it. I'm all about all the records, but I definitely want to make records that a gigantic portion of the population listens to, because I love ears on music. Without ears on music, I'm not sure what it is. And then that goes into our conversation of is art if nobody listens, hears it, sees it, tastes it, all that stuff? Is it? So that's an existential question that I struggle with on the daily.
Yeah. I think it's, and this happens to us when we do workshops with people, because they're climbing a hill, a notional hill, and they see other people at the top of said hill, and of course the hill is changing all of the time. It's not a static thing. You can't climb the same hill that Bruce Swedien climbed or Al Schmidt climbed.
An avalanche already took that down.
It's gone.
It's a different hill.
Yeah, and the it's changing ever faster, So, but people imagine sort of that they'll climb hard and they'll get to the next level on the hill. They'll get through the various milestones, and of course, it's impossible. There are 1 million people at the bottom of the hill, and there's Serban and Manny or whoever at the top. Say if we're talking mixers or whatever. Same for songwriters, same for producers. It's a very small number of people who summit. But I think when you honestly interrogate a lot of what people are doing, they sort of just assume that if they just keep climbing, that they'll level up, and they're not really concerned with what it feels like to be in the act of climbing. And quite often they've set their sights on the top of the mountain a long time ago, and haven't checked back in with the mission.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me on Mike over the last couple of months, 2 or 3 months, when I was sort of at a low point without those why questions, and I wasn't fired up and I wasn't understanding. I could have stopped mastering records any of those days and never mastered another one and probably been fine. I wouldn't have missed it. Now I would miss it, because I sort of found my way back to a sense of purpose with it, and a sense of progress and curiosity and whatever. But I think a lot of people could do with that, and I think maybe they're carrying the sort of negative feelings of that conversation without ever having it. There's the doubt and the baggage of the kind of dread sometimes of the work. And it gets sort of externalized onto the client. It's like, fuck this guy, he wants a vocal up note. And it's like, geez, dude, that's a lot of heat for a vocal up note. You know what I mean?
Give him the vocal up note.
Yeah, just like, maybe, I don't know, take a walk or something. You seem mad about that vocal. Yeah. Clients always want it this way. It's like, all right. It's like, okay, I get it, But so the sort of, the struggle, the negativity, the anger, the frustration gets it's like you're pushing down on the waterbed. It sort of comes up somewhere else,
I just like the image of, because you can't see the hands, but just a very slow upward, just like checking in every year. I don't like the New Year's Eve celebrations. I like the birthday celebration, a self-assessment for your new year, and just to check in where things were and where they are now, whether that's mentally, physically, how your body's feeling, how your mind's feeling, how your relationships are doing, how your career is doing is obviously on the top of the list there for certain people, right? And it is for me. I think that understanding the climb and that you don't have to be in pain during the climb. You're not really rock climbing here. We're just hiking. We're doing Griffith Park. We're not doing Mount Everest. And there's a summit to both. And I don't really care if I get to Everest. That just doesn't seem like, and maybe I did when I was in my like teenage years or early 20s. Like, what is Everest? You can't even really get there. There's a lot of dead people up there.
Covered in shit.
It's covered in shit. Like, I'm not trying to get there anymore.
Empty gas
I don't even
tanks.
know what I was thinking. But I know that there is somewhere that I'm headed, and I like the heading process. I'm not sure I'll ever get to where we're headed.
Again, to tag Spider's point, it's not a binary thing. It's not a work good, work bad. Work. There are people in a deep process of self-discovery through their work, and it's very healthy. There are people who are inventing the next thing that matters in the world, and there are people who are suffering greatly in their work, laboring under a myth that they're going to get something that they either won't get, or when they do get it, it will be meaningless. So there's so much to this. But I think a theme that's recurring for me in our conversation here is how most people tend to benchmark themselves against their peers. So they're looking around, particularly younger engineers, at other younger engineers who are all climbing the same notional hill. And
which is the natural state of things, which is good if the structure and the culture and the guidance of that group is there.
Some sort of support system.
Looking at the way other people, we're designed to do that. Like that's what serotonin systems are for. We have structures in the brain that specifically are involved in this assessment, this lateral assessment, or this, where are we in terms of hierarchies? So that's not the fault, right? That's how everything works.
Yes.
It's really like, what is the structure in which this is occurring? That's the thing. That's the piece.
And if the structure has got problems, or is changing quicker than maybe people can comprehend, then maybe you want to be engaging with that a little more rather than looking at your other.
Well, it's a little bit Lord of the Flies, right? So a pure case of looking at your peers would be like a Lord of the Flies scenario, right? You don't have the expectations of the previous generation imposed on you. There's no, you're in first grade, you're in second grade.
Yeah.
You get an A, you get an F. There's no ruler against which the social comparisons are done. You see what I mean? It's like the ruler is how many 1073s do you have? Or they're like visual things in our culture. It's like the things that signal status that drive people to make purchases or to make certain decisions, where their studio is, what they're driving, how they dress, what they're doing, what their haircut is, all of it, right? It's sort of decoupled from a structure that is where the express purpose of that structure is to produce greatness, well-being, blah, blah, blah. And it's a structure that it's consumerist. It's built around material evidence of something else, material evidence of success, right? It's something you can see on a screen with a bunch of pixels arranged. It's not a more complex, deeper, meaningful thing, that has to do with like real outcomes. It's like what on Instagram, I basically never have the sound on my phone ever.
Yeah. Same.
So when I scroll Instagram, there's no sound until I'm compelled to open up the audio, right? And in stories, I follow some people, and I've made some changes on Instagram recently, which might be cool to talk about at some point. But the a musician may just have like the screen on the fingers, playing pianos, like 4 stories long, and like I'm like, I bet that's beautiful. Boom, don't have time. Don't have time right now. I'm not available to that. It's not the play. It's not really the place.
It's not where you go to get it
for that. For me, you know what I mean. Maybe some people are more patient and they've got the audio on all the time. I don't know, but
it's the rudest thing when someone has their audio on all the time and they're in a session, and then all of a sudden just there's music playing behind you on the sofa.
I can't. Deal with,
this is a.
I can't deal with other people's phone noises.
This is a problem.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know where I'm heading with it, but I think that the structure, without a structure, you have Lord of the Flies, and that's kind of like what we have. It's like a NAMM Lord of the Flies conversation.
Sorry,
it's a Lord of the Flies
image.
at NAMM, and the conversation. You know, like when I have popped into different forums and groups, and you know, many of the conversations I engage in the course of my work is like, it's like the reasoning seems decoupled from the primary purpose of audio engineering or making music or community or fulfillment in a career. It's just, you know, it's the comparison piece needs to be harnessed for positive results. You know, that's part of the innate competitive nature that we have. There's no humanity without comparative.
Yeah, I'm not
framework.
Not afraid of the comparative framework at all.
There's no light.
Yeah.
I really like what you're teasing out though.
But these structures go back so deep. They're like millions and millions of years old and exist in all kinds of creatures. It's like, it's not a culturally invented thing.
Competitive protozoa.
No, this is millions of years old, part of the way life works.
Yeah.
You know.
No, there's no problem with it. It's just in terms of a meaningful thing that engineers can do, young engineers looking to your peers for inspiration and guidance. They don't have a map either. They're lost. And as you say, the problem is with the moment in the culture and in where the music industry is and
I mean, there's so much love going out to Al Schmidt, right? And to me, like Al, when I think about Al, you know, I will idolize Al a bit, right? I will use him in my mind as a representative of like the stuff that matters in recording, you know, and you just hear, you know, Paul McCartney's tribute to him or, you know, whatever. Yeah. Like there's so much evidence in the way people talk about Al Schmidt, right? So I feel comfortable sort of using him as this example. There's so much love going to Al Schmidt from people that I know don't really understand how he operated. They're still like in this early stage of no fault of their own of their audio engineering trajectory where they still haven't gotten their sea legs, that thing we were talking about last week. It's like they're still struggling on the technical thing. They're still translating. They're still not even realizing that they're not in an artistic framework, not even realizing that they can be, you know. And I think like that, a structure that produces an Al Schmidt and all those that came before him, and I'm sure there are great engineers who are younger too. I just would love to meet them. I think they might be rare, pretty rare. Engineers who really get it, who really have a solid reference. They are, I think we just lost Michael there. Maybe he'll ask to come back in.
Just a quick interjection on the young engineers, and we don't really know many of them, and I'm sure there are some great ones. I'm really kind of struck by your noting of the system and the structure that is, you know, supported someone like Al Schmidt or Bruce Swedien, as mentioned earlier, to come up in and learn their craft and practice their craft and express their craft in artistic ways, and they were relied upon in their professional role as that piece. That's not That's not the structure and system engineers are working in right now.
Yeah, the whole culture.
Yeah,
all of the
culture.
Education, all of the incentives, all the ways that we signal to each other.
It's mostly sit down, shut up, have no opinion, right? That's how most of it is. So that's not going to incentivize you to do your best work. Maybe a certain type of personality loves being told what to do and being submissive.
Dylan didn't come to Al Schmidt for that.
Yeah, right.
It was for an atmosphere and a way of reading the room and like.
And a reverence
enhancing the vibe, yeah,
for the work.
It is
reverence
it is reverence
for when the music,
for the magic.
The music shows up.
Yeah,
yeah. But
how are you supposed to do that when you're recording loops? No magic shows up in the loop. Magic shows up in the performance.
Well, that's the thing. Back to stakes. I had a experience yesterday. 2 experiences, all bound up in the same trip, but I got to hang out with and work with an artist that I did some mastering for recently that I came up listening to in a big, big way in my life. Profound influence in my life. And signed an NDA to be in the house, so I can't talk about who or what we were doing, but not like by most people's metric a megastar, but to me, someone who was very important in my musical development. And but he mentioned looking for a young engineer to work with the engineer that he works with. And we got into exactly this conversation about values. And he was saying, I'm looking for someone who gets it, who's willing to spend the time in here, in this little room, crafting this thing with us. He's like, we spend a long time on these songs. And we're getting stuff from different session players coming in. And we need someone who can tidy stuff up and edit stuff and maybe tune stuff. He does a lot of complex harmony stuff. But do it with care, do it because they love it, and from his vantage point as a sort of a senior in the music business, he was like, this seems to be a diminishing sort of asset, right? And I was like, yeah, it is. It's hard to find younger people who have experience with just, players in a room and the musical conversation and the balance and the side of stage thing that Dylan and I were riffing on a few weeks ago on our conversation.
Well, this is, the proportion of so the total number of young engineers grows, right? More people get laptops and DAWs every year, right? So that number's growing. So the percentage of those who are exposed to great performances shrinks, right? Maybe the sum total of them could grow a little bit, but the total numbers, right? So the field of applicants, say, is increasingly never been in a session where anything magical happened. So they haven't honed the actual craft.
As an aside, everyone should follow Dust to Digital on Instagram. I think it's just at Dust to Digital.
And follow the guy who started it. Follow his account too.
Okay, I don't know that.
Yeah, he's just starting it now, but yeah.
The second half of the conversation was I'm way out on the west side, and I had to get all the way back to Pasadena, so it's a long way right at traffic time. A lot of work to do, it was kind of stressed out, and had been listening to an album from the artist that I was working with on the way out, really into it, really fucking loud in the car, and on the way back I was like, compared 2 things, accidentally compared. I was like, I'm going to listen to the new J. Cole record. And for some reason, I got something into my head about listening to the meters. And I was just like, hey, Siri, play the meters. So I didn't listen to a record. I just listened to probably which interestingly was like the ninth or 10th track that Siri played, Apple Music played. But there was a whole bunch that I didn't know. Just played whatever, probably all the most popular ones.
Yeah.
And so I'm stuck in the 10. I really dislike the 10 immensely. Probably the freeway I dislike the most.
I agree with you.
Except on the 4th of July at 10:30.
Good point. Yeah,
that's a good point. The whole city's exploding.
Okay,
we've had that moment together. Yeah.
So I'm start on the 10, and I'm listening to the meters, and just it really struck me, like your language, Spider, about that well-being piece of like, I sort of made a mental decision. I'm not going to fucking bang my head against the steering wheel on this ride home. It's like, I'm going to try and enjoy it. But I was really fucking grooving to the meters, like really, because it's so groovy.
It's really groovy. It's
everything
the
about it.
grooviest.
And then I switched to the J. Cole record after listening to maybe 10 or 11 meters tracks. And it was a profound difference, And yeah, there's some, as Michael said, there's a few good tracks. There's a few good rhymes. The heavy work ethic, self-congratulatory, transcendent thing that he's doing on that, thematically is a little bit one note for sure. But just musically, dynamically, just physically, my body went from the loose grooving in the seat. Like I was that guy you see in traffic who's like waving his hands and sort of like, you catch someone's eye and you're like smiling over. I went from that guy to being the, not quite white knuckling it, but like by the time I got way up on the 110, it was like
tense.
I did the same thing.
And it was like, I
tried to get through it all. I couldn't even get through it all.
Yeah.
There's no groove.
Yeah.
I'm really upset because, upset in like, the grand scheme of things, just because, not the shit on it, because I'm a huge fan. I'm also a huge fan of the team, a huge fan of the homie that mixed it.
Talented people, yeah.
There's something about it that feels like, I don't know, I'll probably get shit on for saying these things publicly, but I kind of, that's what our podcast is for. It just sounds like bad monitoring. It sounds like they're in a different circumstance. They were in a different place. And because the vocals are way too loud and on top of the beat. They could be that on top of the beat when they're not that loud. And it messes with the groove. So doesn't knock, doesn't hit, doesn't bang. So the groove isn't in the low end. It's not in the hips. It's all tense and up in your face. And I don't know why that decision was made. And I would like to find out, honestly, because it sounds a little bit like a mistake.
It's a good point. I had a different thought when I got home.
I'm talking specifically as from an engineering perspective, not a beat perspective. I can't hear the beats because the vocals are so loud. So I don't know if the sample's tight. I don't know if the groove is tight, because to me there's no groove, because he's hitting it on. He's on it. Like Cole's always on it, right? So you hear him and he's driving the records. But when he's in the pocket and the 808 is supporting and the drums are supporting, that's when he shines. When he's Drake loud, it's just too much on it. Like there's no conversation. There's no conversation, exactly. Yeah. So that's my pushback on it. I think it sounds like potentially there was a mistake there, versus like an intentional I don't know.
Artistic choice.
It sounds like when like Dre puts out a record and there's no sub. It's like too many subs in the room. So when it goes to the real world, there's no low end because you thought there was low end because you have 8 15-inch woofers in your room or whatever.
We can do that.
You can, and it just sounds like a little bit of an error. It doesn't sound like you fucked up. Like it just sounds like oh man, you guys are listening loud. It's like when I'll push it back on myself too. I was recently asked this by Evan, who we had in town this week. Like, has Tony ever like listened to anything that you've done and like given you feedback on it, whether it's positive or negative? And I was like, yeah, every time Tony and I get together and he brings up a mix, he's always like, you listen too loud. There's no high mids, or there's not enough high mids. And I'm like, no, there is. That's intentional. Like I'm choosing to put a spectral shaper there or handicap myself to reduce that area because I like warm mixes and I don't mix on tannoys. Yeah. But that's my intent. And then his response is very respectfully like, awesome. Thank you for that, because now I know that you did that on purpose and you're not like, it's because you're listening loud. It's like, I make most of my big mix decisions quiet, but I listen loud for a long period of time because I like to hear the song down loud to feel that impact that I get from the PMCs. Embody it. But I make the decisions pretty low when they're important decisions, and every decision to me is important. But he gave me that, but he understood my intention. So I just want to get like, what was the intention behind that record on the engineering front? Because I think it's a miss. That's all.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. As I pulled in home, I was just like, maybe work isn't enough. Maybe records need more than just work. Which ties into our conversation. Maybe you need inspiration.
Play.
Maybe you need something to say. Play. Maybe you need
purpose.
Purpose, a hunger, a spark. Maybe you need to fucking have your hard drive fail and no one backed it up. Maybe you need that. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you lost a masterpiece. I don't know. But just straight up work and efficiency That's maybe good for the machine, but I don't know if it's good for records.
Creativity is a kind of play. Mm-hmm. It's not work.
Also, there's something we were touching on about the cultural and structural support of the engineer. I question every time I meet an engineer, like what do they want to do? Most engineers want to be producers. So they say that they see the engineer role as a means to an end, a segue to I'm going to work for this producer and then I'm going to become one myself. So this is that's
a producer's assistant.
It's a producer's
not
assistant.
An engineer.
Exactly. So that's the impetus to starting the conversations at the gift shop night in general, was to, express the necessity to have the engineer as a coveted role equal to the producer. But there's no real support for that when the engineers themselves don't see value in it. One, they might not be getting points on record, so they're not sharing in the copyright. Two, it's a day rate position, so they don't see pension, Social Security, and some sort of support for them to retire. They see royalties, publishing as the only way, as a means to an end. If you don't want to do this at 85 years old, and maybe some of us do, I don't know where I'm on that spectrum. I maybe once in a while, but not as much as I do now, for sure. And then I wanted to juxtapose that with the conversation of kind of my my take on mentorship and the responsibility that I feel that I have to express it, because I had a model to look at. I came up under a great for so many years, and most of my thoughts were, I don't want to be working that hard when I'm that age. I learned the opposite about myself, that I don't want to be doing that. I want to set, and he didn't want me to either, which is why he got me more into the publishing side and the production side, which I have, since refuted and returned back on that promise. I don't know if I made a promise, but we both knew that's not the right move, and that there's a means to an end here with engineering. So I can understand why the young people want to do that, but I still think there is a way to shift the culture to support engineers as a role that's worth embodying and having, and becoming an expert at and a master at. I think that there's some language in there that I haven't quite put the nail on the head yet. I think about it obviously every day. Most engineers want to be producers, and I don't know why. It's this odd speculative nature of the mystery of, is this going to work out or not, versus mixing and recording works out. It's actually there.
So
it's a bit more tangible, and I wonder why.
I think a way of saying what you're saying is that most people you meet who you think or they say or are playing the role of engineers are actually producers in the making. They're not actually engineers. They're doing the role of engineer in the session.
Well, they're hired to be, right? So going as simply you're right though.
Yeah.
But they are getting paid and credited as an engineer.
But their career track is they're on the producer track. They're not on the big dog engineer track. And I think that's actually.
But do they know that's an option?
There's a case for that.
Of course there is.
Yeah. I think So,
but they can't all get work.
The case for
if they
that,
all want to be producers.
Well, I think the case for that is to start younger, and to receive guidance at a very early age, so that by the time you're 25, you have significant income and you're saving money and you're strategic and you're setting up this nest egg. But if people can write and produce, they should.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
If they're good at that, then go make that money.
Yeah.
But for those that can't, aren't interested, it's not their thing. I think engineering, I think people would benefit from having financial advice from the time they're teenagers.
Yeah, I wish I did.
Well, you know what I mean?
I wish I did.
That people can spend 10 years fucking around before they start setting themselves up.
You think about, someone in a relationship, guy or girl, my partner doesn't value me. And it's well, quit fucking with that partner and A, value yourself, and B, find someone who values you, or create a situation where you're valued. We're not going to fix the partner. We're not going down that road, right? So I think increasingly people are going to have to, there's got to be pockets of new ways of doing things. You know, I look at someone like Dennis working with Khalid, and it's like the value of what he brings, you know, it's clearly, it's not this thing that we're talking about. It's a whole other level. It's in the world of Khalid, it's a sort of a global care, vision, curation, you know, and you've been party to way more of it, obviously. But it's consistent. It's
inspiring.
There's a long arc to it. And that's a sort of a pocket of like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense here. This is enabling artistry. This is enabling someone to do great work. And being part of it and party to it and knowing when it arrives and, you know, making a living, sustainable, you know, all of that. So I think we're going to have to sort of establish pockets of a different paradigm rather than sort of like arguing with people and saying, you should value me more. It's like, I should just get the other kid.
Yeah, but a game of Legos, you're not that valuable.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yes.
And this is, again, why I'm encouraging the questions of like, what kind of sessions are you working? What kind of sessions do you think you want to be on? So if you think you want to be on an A-list modern pop session, maybe it's just a higher pressure version of what you're doing already. And if you don't love what you're doing already, then maybe there's got to be another way. Maybe there's a way of investing in relationships with certain artists or certain producers who are doing more interesting things or more creative things, or have a bigger vision. I mean, you look at people like Ethan or Blake Mills or people like that, even D Mile. Like I was thinking, you know, he came across my radar like 3 years ago via Kyle working with Victoria Monet, and it's like immediately as soon as you hear stuff, you're like, this is good. This is really good. This is really deep musicality here. And it's like that inevitable arc towards success, right? There are people like that out there who are at that level of 3 years ago or below. And probably a lot of people listening know someone here like, yeah, well, he's not doing money work yet, or she's not doing this, but they're doing interesting things. I think of Ian and Sophie and like just watching their arc up so quickly, you know, it's like, and knowing that was inevitable, you know what I mean? And I think increasingly for you and I, Spider, like part of our job is putting that into words and sort of building a verbal sort of world for people to step into, you know, a kind of a story of like, look how it could be. And I guess I'm thinking a lot about that right now, that vision piece, that people stop, connect with the right people and establish a sense of what could be and where they're headed. Because otherwise, I don't know, I just see a lot of people burning a lot of energy.
There's too much input, too much information coming at everyone. And they're really like, John, you know, what John, I think you were describing earlier is like, and both of you actually, is like taking a moment to reflect, right? It's not it's not all day, every day, but you take a moment to reflect. And I think like the fact that we can escape boredom so easily with an incredible device in our pockets makes it so that we're not very reflective, you know, and not only reflect in solitude, but reflect in a group.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that, you know, I mean, what's working for us has worked for so many small teams and bands and, you know, groups of scientists or whatever that collaborate in an intimate way. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
What else are you thinking about this week, Rory?
I was, it's funny because I was thinking that I don't have much time for thinking, but clearly I'm doing some thinking. But I was craving time to walk and think, and this week been craving sort of a ban on input, a ban on Instagram and Twitter and podcasts and TV, and just sort of have some stuff come out of me, you know.
A digital vacation.
A bit of a digital vacation. Mostly I just want to get back walking, and I haven't been walking at all. Been too busy. And I would love to try and get a vacation soon, like a week or something would be a big deal.
Put it on the calendar, man.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's synchronize.
Mm-hmm. So just something with the kids. But yeah, what else I've been thinking about? There's really this whole moment. I have just this image of people, and I think it's why the kind of Warren Buffett style advice or the Jim Guy Knowledge Project advice, this old folksy American work story advice is bumming me out so much, because I see people doing it, and it reminds me of when you're a kid and you go to the beach, to the sand dunes, and you're climbing a sand dune, and it's just breaking, the face of it is breaking away as you're climbing it, and the harder you climb, the worse it gets, until it sort of just, you slide down and land on your ass. And that's funny when you're a kid. It's not funny when you're 50, and when you have kids to feed,
right.
Or when you've gone into music and your parents were like, "Oh, you should be a doctor," and you've put it on the line for this thing, So really, I'm just thinking a lot about this, and thinking about what it means for me, like what the imagined trajectory is for me in my work, and trying to. Our conversation last week, Spider, was kind of low key, just the two of us, but it sort of gave voice to a lot of stuff that I'd been thinking about. About really how surprised I am to arrive at this moment and find myself an advocate of artfulness or poetry, and sort of increasingly bummed out by strategy and techniques and guides and 10 top tips, like and objective data, and looking to people like David White for their insight.
Yeah, we almost talked about this over wine on Saturday. We were like gonna jump in. I felt like we were about to jump into that conversation on Saturday.
Yeah. We could have used more time.
I haven't had much time to think about it too.
There were 9 bottles of wine in the way.
At least
having that.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was a wine orgy. It was really good.
One
and
of the
really
more
interesting
epic,
company.
Yeah, epic wine hangs that I've been a part of.
Yeah. But I would love to. Yeah, I would love to have the low-key conversation with Evan that we sort of started kicking around, because I think it's really, there's so much stuff bound up in this moment of change. There's a meme going around at the moment on Reddit and whatever, I'm sure it's on Twitter too, and it's a photo of the Wright brothers' first flight, Kitty Hawk or whatever it was called, their airplane, and Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin or one of these dudes on the moon, and it's like something basically about the pace of change and the fact that these two events were only 60 years apart.
Yeah.
So, and if you were to graph that pace of change, with respect to Eric Weinstein and Peter Thiel's sort of theory of the Great Stagnation, just the pace of cultural change and the COVID-induced acceleration of cultural change that's happened. Things are evolving very quickly, and the old information is less and less useful. And
I mean, the dial-up modem was 17 years ago, and now we have 5G.
Yeah. It's
like, come on.
It's
less than 2 decades, and
that's intense.
You can send a 10 gigabyte session to someone in the same fucking hour.
Yeah.
It's fucking
wild. When I moved
what do you
here,
mean? Like stagnation. Sorry, I get it with respect to, I understand a lot of it, but
10 years ago when I moved here, I would, my work slowed down a lot when I moved, and I set up a temporary studio because we lived on the Central Coast at my wife's mom's house for 6 months before we moved down here, because my wife's job was based up there before we had the girls. And a part of my workflow was making DDPs or making CD masters and going to FedEx with them and FedExing them to Ireland to my clients there.
Yeah,
and then it was like,
Jesus Christ.
That's
insane.
Yeah.
I was there, bro.
$45.
I was there.
I would FedEx.
I excelled in that world.
Yeah. And
you're still excelling in this world.
That was 10, 11 years ago. So
Dude, you had to have like a handwriting game to like Sharpies and fucking.
Well, apparently not, because I made records and I definitely don't have a handwriting game.
Definitely not nostalgic for the old days, but I'm just on the point of your 60 years apart. Like things are headed towards another major shift, and
I think we're in it.
We're in it. I mean, I feel like we're maybe on the brink of it, but I guess we're definitely in it to some degree.
I think we're in it, and we'll look back and realize that we were in it very soon.
It's also that makes me think about another thing I was going to bring up earlier, which is I think a lot of people in their younger people in their teens and 20s that might listen to us won't agree with anything that we say until they're in their mid 30s to 40s in a lot of ways, because it's not the cultural norm to not to take it easy, to go for a walk before your session. It's just not what it is. It's I wake up late, I get some food somewhere on the way in, I go to the studio, and that's it. And I think a lot of the things that we're not going to realize the importance of, and I know it from my own life. I mean, I'm 15 years late to a lot of things, or at least 10 years late to a lot of things that I wish I knew 10 years prior. And I'm not going to complain about it, but I'm very aware of the things that I didn't do 10 years ago to set myself up, whether it was health-wise, financially, or whatever. So I just know that's going to happen. And I think you're just completely right. Honestly, I'm just fully agreeing with you that we're in it right now, and we're going to laugh at our future selves, kicking ourselves in the balls.
Even the term reopening, just doesn't make sense to me. We're going to reopen. It's like, I don't think so. I think we're just going to go out there. Yeah. And it's going to be different than it used to be.
Yeah, it's.
Hold on.
It just implies that we're going back to the way it was.
Yes.
It's.
I know what you mean on a more philosophical level, but on a actually tangible level, like things are opening up.
Yeah.
And they're about to be the same that they were, meaning you can go to the restaurant 100% capacity and not wear a mask and order the same food that you did, except for it's a new menu. Maybe it's seasonally different, but it's the same. Like in a lot of ways, it's the same. So I'm not finding the thread there. That's like the obvious. It's going to be different. Like concerts. I mean, Lollapalooza is announced this morning.
Saw the lineup. Yeah,
it is announced this morning.
Yeah,
I imagine everyone at every creative agency is like, "Where are we booking? Who's booking what?" And like everyone's hands on right now. That seems like to be probably the new energy that we're not feeling being at the podcast, being in the studio.
2019 at concerts, like no one there had lived through a pandemic and like a global financial crisis. And in 2022, everyone there will have lived through
and
that.
The
That's
same
what I mean.
People that
That's
would
a different milieu.
But the same people that would have been there in 2019 taking MDMA and licking each other's face are also going to do it in 2022. That's all I'm saying.
But they'll be different people, and culture will be different.
Yes,
I know
that's what I'm saying.
I think that weirdly,
you do the same thing. Yeah.
The COVID dynamic, or whatever has shifted because of COVID, is just a part of it. But I think there are bigger forces at play, and it's I guess it's not. It's important to say that it's not doom and gloom, because I think there's incredible opportunities. We had a listening session with a client recently that we talked about it last week. Our first sort of demo listening session really together in a long time. And sort of Spider and I painting for this client who's working with another client who's someone of vision and means. And we were talking about this moment in history and the need for great art, the fact that it can actually, there's this incredible hunger for it. And that again was a theme that came up in my conversation yesterday with the artist who I was working with. The need hasn't gone away. And I think there is great potential in this moment, and great potential to reinvent and to create new workflows, new ways of doing things, new values, new games. Just competing in the games that other people lay out for you is not the way forward right now.
Yeah, that's
and I think that's really what's on my mind. And for me, it's like I want to invent some new games, you know, that's part of the conversation we've had here. For me, with my work, is like realizing that when I look to my mastering peers, it's like I don't really want almost any of their gigs. I want a new gig. Yeah. I don't want to take that guy's gig or that girl's gig. Yeah. I want to do it a different way. And very quickly, from even being able to think that or say it, it's kind of happening for me. Mm-hmm. You know, the mix of work and clients is really taking shape in a really fun way. There's still all sorts of practical things. I finished at 4 a.m. 2 nights this week. That's not a plan or sustainable. But, you know, on one of them, at least, the record I was working on was really fucking killer with an artist that I really love. And it's an ambitious project, artistically, musically, had a fucking orchestra on it, like, and really good. And the stakes are high, and everybody's invested in taking it seriously. The mix work was great. So, like, okay, if I'm going to stay up to 4 a.m., that's worth doing it for. But as a general point, and you know what? I'm 45. Like, we're not just talking to young engineers, we're talking to anyone, you know, is this step back moment and just, or this recalibration, this check in with your homies, rather than looking at your competitors and thinking about what are we doing this for? What's the point here? And of course, is it all going to be art and glory and creativity? Is like, there's going to be work. There's going to be backing up. There's going to be invoicing. There's going to be, you know, mixing, mastering, writing, creating, producing songs that aren't all that.
Seems like the most important point that you're saying is it's not going to look like anybody else's.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah.
No, like it can't.
Yeah.
Because it's not theirs.
Yes.
And then what's the purpose of comparing to? It doesn't seem like there's any necessity there. And there might have been in the past. I just don't see that now. Everybody's path is more different than it was.
Certainly the most interesting work that I'm hearing is coming from people who are outliers in terms of their, you know, in terms of the way that they do things, you know, in terms of how they think about records. You look at someone like John Bryan, like, who at various points has come in and out and done records that have hit culturally and then a bunch that haven't, or soundtracks or whatever. But like the way that he thinks about music and approaches it, the gear that he uses, the reverence for the art of music, it's very different to the norm now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or again, like referencing Blake Mills or people like that, you know, on the Ethan, on the more indie alternative, you know, songwritery side, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, in other genres there are people, you know, there are outliers who are doing the interesting stuff too, you know? Yeah.
I mean, I hope so. Oh, they're there.
Yeah. It's a very interesting moment.
New kinds of opportunities. I think that's one thing the lockdown did help people do, it seems to me, is some time to reflect.
That and mRNA vaccines.
Yeah.
There's some positives that came out of it.
Well, yeah. But yeah, I think the field of opportunity, I think people were reevaluating living in expensive city, you know, like, is this the financial track we want to be on as a family? You know, there are a lot of discussions going on that I was a part of. And, you know, like, if we think about, you know, the people listening to this podcast, you know, we share a common ground, things that we're concerned with, our sort of occupation, our work, or, you know, some values, what we value, right? So what are the opportunities to level up, right? We believe it's together, right? That it's a communal effort, that it takes a level of organization to transcend what one can do on their own. Some kind of synchronizing with other people in some kind of organized way. What does that look like? You know, the things we talk about are like, professional guilds or civic organizations are like an example from the past. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you can look at churches, that's sort of embedded community, interdependent households, shared fate, all the stuff that brings depth and meaning and to communities, where people get more from being a part of it than they put into it. But also a new kind of management company, helping a number of engineers level up. Maybe there are different levels to that. Like, what kind of relationships can we have to help each other level up individually and collectively? Are there new norms in the music business that will be more or less friendly? I mean, that's how I think about, like, it's not just like, how can we organize? It's how can we organize in a way that's dynamic and will help us adapt to an ever-changing future, And so, I think resilience is an important dimension to think about. And again, it all comes back to community. I mean, all roads lead to community for human beings. We are social creatures. Our very selves are socially constructed. It's debatable whether we're conscious at all without each other. Can you even develop consciousness without social input as a infant? It's hard to.
Yeah, I told the story before, but I got to spend time with an 11-and-a-half-year-old boy in China who didn't. I was reading in the maybe the Lisa Feldman Barrett book about the human development, and if children don't get inputs, physical touch, spoken to, whatever, the damage, literally they just don't develop.
It's failure to thrive.
This boy at the age of 11-and-a-half with no physiological problems. He had no syndrome he wasn't disabled mentally or physically in any way other than through neglect. He had been fed, but nothing else. Had the mental age of I think it was at that point 1.5 years, and was basically lying on the ground like a toddler, rolling around. We played with toys like you'd play with a baby, and it was very. I just actually got an update on him in the last week, and it was really beautiful to see. He's doing much better, but he missed that window of development.
It's all that neural structure.
Yeah, myelination and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 100%. We develop in context, and I don't think that stops. So I think we should probably. I'd like to close on that. What the question is: what's your context? Is it healthy or not? And if it isn't, that's okay, because probably most people's isn't in some way or other. Maybe we can do something about that. And I think the other thing is just to maybe ask the community, the people listening, what they're thinking about this moment. Are they seeing some
opportunities? They see?
What avenue are they seeing that's exciting to them? It might be that if you want to capture magic, maybe there's more magic happening in podcasts than there is in record making right now. Certainly I listen to more podcasts than I do records. But they hit me in different ways.
Of course.
But so 10 people line up to get in the record business, and maybe 3 of them should be in the podcast business. Maybe someone should be in post. Maybe someone is a gifted teacher. Not everyone needs to be rocking the splice pack. So,
Awesome.
Not everyone needs to be rocking the splice pack.
Is that the title? Did we just name it?
No, we got the title.
Oh, we did? Okay.
NAMM, Lord of the Flies.
Oh, there
you go.
Flies at NAMM.
Undeniable.
Undeniable.
Yeah.
Get out of here. That's fucking good.
Right. Well, this was great. I crave more time to think. That's what's been on my mind. Is I wish I had more on my mind.
Me too.
I wish I
had talk about that off mic a little bit.
Yeah. But we're here. We're fighting another day. We've got poetry. We had ribs.
I'm going to read a couple out loud to the guys while we clean up.
Okay. John,
we're going to have a reading.
In recital mode.
Snaps.
Yeah.
I don't know how to snap too.
I saw someone do that on a live stream the other day, and I wouldn't have known what. I would have thought they were having a stroke or something, other than the fact that you guys had told me about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing.
It's such a thing. I don't know who started it, but it's a thing.
Yeah, it seems awfully constrained.
Till next week with a guest.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Who's the guest?
Dale Becker.
Dale Becker coming through.
It's a big one.
Can't wait.
Here?
Yeah.
Epic.
Here.
Yeah.
Here.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sick.
I'm seeing him Friday. His birthday.
This is a big one. We've been teasing this for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask him all the plugins he uses.
I know.
What are the settings?
what order?
What are settings? Yeah.
We're going to get into the. No, I'm not.
How many L1s?
I expect you should have long rulers and smack me if I ask him a dumb question. just give me an immediate smackdown.
He's sitting right next to you. You should actually cozy up a little bit closer.
Yeah, I know. I'm really excited to talk to Dale in light of the conversation we had tonight, because Dale is literally a bottomless well of enthusiasm and joy and energy for music and the music business.
Yeah.
So I could definitely always use it more of that,
Agreed.
I've known Dale since 2007. He's always been that. He's always been that for me. It's always been a shining light.
Yeah. It's great. So
looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And then the week after that, we have workshop, and then we cycle back to an AMA.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Looking
I
forward
got
to
to slot
that.
in the workshop. We've got 3 people picked, and we've got to slot the people into the dates, which we're going to do this week. But all young engineers. Some haven't even really started their career yet, so I think there's a lot to.
I checked out Pedro. Pedro's one of the workshop.
Yes, Pedro Paz.
Yeah,
is
I checked out
handle.
his Instagram. He's got an aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's clean, man.
I had great conversations with all 3. I stood up in the mountains behind Pasadena. I had to stop in one place to get coverage, and I spoke to the 3 people in a row, and it was a really good, interesting conversations.
Good.
And all 3 ready to do it. I was like, "Are you ready to go in?" And they were like, "Yeah." I'm like, are you really ready to go in, like on the mic?" And everyone was on board, so I'm psyched. All right, dudes.
I hope I'm feeling especially punchy on those days.
Yeah, let's keep the work days light and the espresso machine hot,
Rocking.
and we'll do it.
Till then,
I'm inspired to bring it. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Peace.
Next time.
Conversations is produced and mixed by Dylan Seals. The Conversations theme was performed and recorded by the Hazelrigg brothers.